We're really diving deep today into a case that I know a lot of our listeners are familiar with, but was going to be looking at it through a very specific lens.
Yeah, this is one that's been in the news a lot recently, and it's definitely complicated. So I think taking a closer look, like we're doing today, is super valuable.
Absolutely. And we're going to be focusing on R. Kelly's daughter, Buku Abi, and the allegations that
And
she's made against him.
right, and our main source for this deep dive is this really in-depth article from Mirror Online. It goes beyond just sort of the surface level stuff and really digs into the family dynamics at play here.
And that's what's so important to remember in all of this, right? These aren't just names in a headline. These are real people with really complex relationships.
Exactly, and I think, when we talk about Buku's story, it's impossible to ignore the fact that she's choosing to share her allegations now after her father has already been convicted.
Right. She's coming forward with this now after he's already serving a 31-year sentence for those other charges.
Yeah, and that's something that a lot of people are picking up on, and understandably so.
So Buku is 26 now, but she says that the abuse started when she was much younger, before she was even 10 years old. And she's talking about all of this in a TVEI documentary called Karma, A Daughter's Journey.
And I think the fact that she's choosing to share her story in this way through a documentary rather than going through the courts again is really significant.
Absolutely. It gives her a lot more control over how her story is told.
Exactly. And she uses that platform to make her feelings about her father really clear.
Yeah.
She says that she believes he belongs in prison for what he's done.
And it's hard to imagine, what it must be like to grapple with that, especially considering everything that's already happened.
And beyond the legal aspects of it all,
Yeah.
we also need to think about the lasting emotional toll this has taken on Buku.
Right. In the article, she talks about the abuse as something that really dimmed her inner spark. It changed who she was as a person.
And that's what's so heartbreaking about these situations. It's not just about the event itself. It's about the way it can fundamentally change a person.
Absolutely. And it's not just Buku who's been affected by all of this. The article also talks about how her siblings stopped visiting R. Kelly in prison after she told their mother about the alleged abuse.
Right. So you can see how this is impacting the entire family dynamic. It's causing these really deep rifts.
And as we move further into the article, we're going to see how those dynamics come into play even more, especially with R. Kelly's other daughter, Joanne.
Yeah, that's where things get even more complicated and honestly even more heartbreaking. So Joanne, she's actually the same age as Buku 26, and she's also talked about having a really strained relationship with their father.
Yeah, and what really stood out to me in the article was her saying that she won't even take her son to visit R. Kelly in prison.
It's a powerful statement, right? Like
Yeah.
she feels so strongly about it that she wants to protect her son from even meeting his own grandfather.
It really makes you think about the weight of that decision, and what it says about the level of distrust there.
And when you read her reasons for it, it's even more impactful. The article quotes her saying, "Nobody wants to be the child of the father that is out here hurting women and children."
Wow. Yeah. That's a lot to carry with you.
It is, and it speaks to the generational trauma that we often see in these types of situations.
It's not just about R. Kelly and the accusations against him. It's about the ripple effect it has on his kids and potentially even his grandkids.
And it's really important to remember here that both Buku and Joanne have their own unique perspectives and journeys.
Of course, just because they share a father doesn't mean they've experienced everything in the same way.
Exactly. And it's crucial to avoid making any assumptions about their individual experiences.
And it's also important to remember that R. Kelly maintains his innocence, right? The article mentions his attorney, Jennifer Bonjean, who very strongly denies all of Buku's accusations.
Yeah, Bonjean actually brings up a point that's worth noting. She draws a parallel to accusations that were made by Kelly's ex-wife.
Okay, I remember those.
Right, and she emphasizes that those claims were investigated by child services, and ultimately they didn't find any evidence to support them.
Which is a detail that I think often gets lost in these high-profile cases.
It's easy to get caught up in the headlines and the public back and forth, but we can't forget that there are legal processes in place, and due process is essential.
Absolutely. And I think this just highlights how complex these cases really are.
There are so many layers to it all, and it's rarely as simple as it might seem from the outside looking in.
Exactly. And I think what's really important for us to remember is that at the center of all of this are real people whose lives have been deeply impacted.
That's a really important point to keep in mind as we continue this conversation.
It's easy to get caught up in, the legal back and forth and all of the different opinions being thrown around.
Right, and it's important to kind of take a step back sometimes and remember that there are real people at the heart of this story.
Exactly. And in this case, we have both Buku and Joanne speaking out, trying to reclaim their narratives.
Absolutely. And it's impossible to ignore the emotional weight of their words,
Mm.
when you read what they're saying about their father.
Yeah, there's one line from Joanne in particular that really stuck with me. She said, "He knows exactly why we can't have the relationship that we would have liked to have with him."
Wow. Yeah, that's really powerful.
It is, and it makes you think about the long-term consequences of all of this, not just for R. Kelly and the accusations against him, but for his children, his grandchildren.
It's that ripple effect that we talk about, right? How trauma can echo through generations.
Exactly, and it raises so many questions, like how do we as a society address these issues of abuse, power, accountability?
These are big questions, really important ones. And while there aren't easy answers, I think engaging in these conversations is a crucial first step.
Absolutely, and listening to the stories of survivors like Buku and Joanne.
Exactly. Their voices, their experiences are so important to understanding the true impact of these situations. So
As we wrap up this deep dive today, we want to leave you with this question. How have Buku and Joanne's stories shaped your understanding of this case and the wider issue of abuse and its lasting effects?